Welcome class to the 1.3 extension notes over three-dimensional coordinate system. Again, make sure you put your date in the upper right hand corner. So in 1.3 we learned about distance and midpoint, and those we learned about in both the 1 dimension and 2 dimensions. Now we are going to go 1 dimension further, and we're going to work in the 3-dimensional coordinate system. The 3-dimensional coordinate system we're working on, or what we can call it as 3D, is split up into 3 separate planes. It's split up into the XZ plane, the YZ plane, and the XY plane. Now the plane that most of us are accustomed with in the 2 dimension is the XY plane. Now by definition it says the XY plane is described using the equation z equals 0. Now the XY plane is just your standard x and y coordinates. So if we wanted to plot a point on the XY plane in 3 dimensions, simply what we'd do is we'd pick our x coordinate, our y coordinate, and z would just be 0. So if we thought about plotting the point 2, 3 in the 2 dimensions, this is the same as plotting in 3 dimensions 2, 3, 0. So if we were to put that onto our point, we would go 2 towards the x and 3 towards the y. And we would plot that in the same manner. Now, when we add the other 2 planes to it, this is creating our 3 dimensions. So the XZ plane, y is set equal to 0, and in the YZ plane, x is equal to 0. This is done in the exact same way as the XY plane. Now the big difference between plotting in 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions is now we have 3 axes. So in 2 dimensions, the only 2 axes that we'd work on are x and y. Now we are adding the z axes. So whenever we're giving a coordinate, it's going to be given as a coordinate x, y, z. So we'll be plotting our x coordinate first along the x-axis. Then we find it corresponding to the y and we cross those. And then z basically represents the height. In example 1, that is what we're actually going to practice, is plotting points in 3 dimensions. Now in example 1, it tells us to plot the point at 2, 3, 5. Now, remember what it tells us is the first coordinate represents our x, our second coordinate represents our y, and our third coordinate represents our z. Now if we look at the 3-dimensional coordinate system, what they do, so the x coordinate, we go over 2 places. So we go over 2. Then we find the y coordinate, which is at 3. So we are going to move along the y coordinate 3 spaces. And then the z, like we said, represents the height. So now we work our way up the z-axis, up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is how we plot in 3 dimensions. Now in B we're going to do the exact same thing. B tells us to plot the point 6, 4, 3. So remember, we're going to plot the x first. So the x is at 6. So we're going to count our x, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this is our first point on the x-axis. Now it tells us for the y-axis, we need to move over 4. So we are going to go parallel to the y-axis 4 units. So we're going to move 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is where our point is on the XY axis. So if we were to plot this as a box, this is at 4, and this is at 6. So our x is still 6, and our y is 4. Now with our z is 3 units high. So we're going to move 3 units high. So we're going to move 1, 2, 3. And we're moving parallel to the z-axis. And that is where our final point ends, is at 6, 4, 3. Now please continue the notes for part 2 of section 1.3 extension notes over the three-dimensional coordinate system.